It is the hottest day of the year. I am very, very sweaty and there is no air conditioning, so let's get on with it. For the past 6 weeks, I've been doing a 6 weeks, 6 genres challenge, reading genres that I think I don't like every week for 6 weeks to see if I can find books that I actually like in the genre, if I've just been prejudiced against a genre, and to hopefully find some new favourite books. So for this challenge, I read romance books, which I thought were silly and soppy, science fiction, which I thought was too much about plot and facts and not enough about actual people, thrillers, which I thought were dicklit, like meaningless and pointless but with guns, fantasy, which I thought was overwritten and sexist, cozy mystery, which I thought was just for old people, and horror, which honestly, I was just too much of a scaredy cat to read. But over the course of the last 6 weeks, I read 3 books at least from each of these genres, and I made a vlog where I told you what I thought about them. So I will leave the playlist in the cards if you would like to go and check out all of those videos. But for this wrap up, let me tell you what I thought about romance. In week 1, I read romance because I thought I'd start things easy, but I did DNF a book. I DNF'd A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. The story was predictable and at the same time convoluted and seemed to go on for too long. There were dubious issues of consent and I had never really found thick fingers to be a sexy description. I also read If I Never Met You by Mhairi MacFarlane and I really enjoyed it. It was a smart and clever rom-com with a fake dating trope, which I've discovered I love, and I will definitely read more from her. I love the way that it talked about social issues, feminism and racism in the workplace, and I thought that the romance itself was pretty cute too. And then finally I read Dance Upon the Air by Norah Roberts, which I guess I'd give 2.5 to 3 stars, somewhere around there. I love the descriptions of the cute quaint villages and the interactions between the friends in it, but I found that it was a bit problematic in terms of its treatment of domestic abuse survivors, but mostly it was quite cute and definitely an autumnal read, which is something I love. I think that romance can be good escapism for me, but I need some recommendations. I can't just jump in because there's so much to wade through, and I think from now on I will only take recommendations from people that I trust in this genre, because A Princess in Theory was highly recommended and also terrible. But for week 2 was science fiction, and I read Frankenstein, which I thought was very interesting, but definitely the sort of classic where I need to read around it more to understand the historical and literary context. It wasn't the sort of classic that I immediately connected with. It was very beautifully written, but I felt like the philosophy was a bit weird and I wasn't 100% on board. Then I read Illuminae, which has been incredibly popular on BookTube. I thought that some parts of it were good. I loved the concept, I loved the mixed media style, I loved the bit of real tension that I felt during some of the action scenes. However, I felt like some of the romance was a bit cheesy and it fell into the problem that YA often faces, in that there were absolutely no stakes and so the tension never really hit the way that it should. I was very disappointed by the ending. I also read Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig and I thought that that was a really good book, but not really science fiction. It was very thrilling and tense. I loved that aspect of it. I loved the stillness that was reflective of the place in which it was set, and I loved the subtly rising and ratcheting of tensions and the allegory between what was happening in the book and what happened during colonialism. However, the science wasn't really in it, and so it felt like it was more like just a creepy thriller rather than an actual science fiction. I think maybe that when I was choosing my books I avoided real hard sci-fi, but as we will learn from one of the later weeks, I don't really love massive set pieces, especially when they're very this is happening, rather than character focused. So I think I'll avoid them in future. It was good to learn though here, as I did through Illuminae, that I do like that breathlessness on the edge of your seat, what's going to happen page turning thing, because that's not something that I usually get from the books that I tend to read. But week 3, thrillers. And I read the worst book I have read so far this year, and that is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. I kept reading in the hopes that the twist would save it, but it never did. It was like the worst kind of melodrama. The first half of the book was deathly dull, and then towards the end suddenly everything started happening and it was incredibly predictable. I knew the twists way before they happened, and it ended with a villain monologue on a rooftop in the rain and someone gets pushed off a rooftop through a window. However, what I have heard is that people who like thrillers often don't like them as audiobooks because you lose that page-turning tension. So perhaps that was at least part of my problem with this book. Then I read Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy by John le Carre, which is a classic of the spy thriller genre, and I thought it was competently done, although laden with the homophobia and misogyny inherent in 1970s fiction written by these upper-class elite men. But overall, I just found it kind of boring, and I don't think I'll be picking up any more of his works. Not really sure I care that much about spies, although I did harbour wishes of being one when I was a child. And finally, My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithewait, which I did enjoy, but more as a dark comedy and less as a thriller. I never really felt any sense of tension or peril, but it was very funny and intriguing as an exploration of human psychology and of weaponised femininity. So again, I'm not sure that thrillers are for me. They're not really my kind of escapism, but I was also left disappointed that I never felt that tense. And I really, really do desire now to have that tension feeling. I don't know if listening to lots of them as audiobooks was part of the problem, because I did also read another thriller earlier in the year called The Temple House Vanishing, and I ended up giving that one 3 stars as well. So maybe they just don't generally work for me. But if you know one that made you catch your breath and not be able to put down the book, please do let me know in the comments. And then it was week 4. Fantasy. I only read 2 books for fantasy because fantasy books are notoriously long. First I read Upon a Burning Throne by Ashok K. Banker, and I really didn't enjoy this. It definitely lived up to fantasy's reputation of being a misogynist book. It also didn't really understand plot, which I think is kind of important for fantasy. Everything important happened on off page, as if the writer didn't know how to write the important scenes. This book definitely solidified in my mind that battles are boring, and if I don't have to read another one ever again, I will be happy. I also read The Bone Clocks by David Mitchel, and I enjoyed this one more. It's definitely more skillful writing. This writer knows how to plot. But this book is genre bending with 6 different sections which are each a different genre. Only the first one and the last 2 are really very fantasy inspired. I wished it was focused more on one character than the characters it ended up being, although I did appreciate that this writer could make you feel for characters who are very morally grey. But in the end, it was something I admired more than I liked. I already knew before going into this that I like low fantasy. I like things that are slightly magical realism and fabulism, and I like things that are folklore or fairy tale inspired. So I think I'll be sticking to those from now on. Week 5 was Cosy Mystery, a week I was really looking forward to getting all cosy with my mysteries, as I love Agatha Christie adaptations on the TV. But it wasn't my favourite week. That week I DNF'd The Plot is Murder, which just felt really lazy to me. The writing was lazy, there was no research, the main character had no agency, she did nothing, she was just dragged along by her family, and I was just entirely uninterested in the murder. Then I read The Mitford Murders by Jessica Fellowes, and again, the writing was lazy. I felt like it put rose-tinted glasses on the past. The thing about a lot of cosy mysteries is that they are either classics like Agatha Christie, or they are set in the past, because that's part of the cosy appeal, I guess. But I don't really like reading historical fiction that makes the past seem like this idyllic, perfect place, and the mystery itself wasn't really that compelling either. Then I read The Unexpected Return of Josephine Fox, which I thought was competent enough. It was well written, I cared about the characters, the mystery was intriguing, and it definitely didn't sugarcoat the past, giving an insight into class and gender difficulties in the 1940s and earlier. It was a little melodramatic for my taste, but I think it could make a good TV series. And then finally I read The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie, and 5 stars, 100% perfect. Absolutely loved it. Great mystery, well plotted, good, funny, quirky characters, very cosy, very nice way to spend an afternoon. I really don't think that cosy mystery is my personal genre of escapism, and it's also one that's so mass-produced, there are so many published every year, that I feel like you'd need an expert to take your hand and guide you through the stacks to find the ones that are actually worth reading. But I will definitely read more Agatha Christie, it's just so good. And for week 6 was horror, and I read Wilder Girls by Rory Power, another popular booktube book. And I thought that it had some beautiful writing, but it was actually pretty inconsistent. It also fell into the YA trope of not having high enough stakes. I never really truly believed in the peril. There was good queer representation though, which I love in a YA book, and the premise itself was very interesting. I also read My Mother's House by Francesca Monplaisir, which had the most interesting concept. Part of this book is told from the perspective of a homicidal house, which was really, really intriguing. I loved the way that it played with time and with structure in order to get you into the mindset of the different sections, and I really thought that the writing was very, very skilled. It made me very interested in reading more about Haitian history and more literature from Haiti. The trauma and terrible things that happen were very delicately handled, but again, I really didn't feel very much tension in this book. And then finally, I read The Haunting of Hill House by Shelley Jackson, a classic of the genre, and I liked the writing of this one. It was compelling, it was intriguing, it definitely managed to build some tension. I thought that the atmosphere of the daytime in the house was really dreamy in a very creepy way that I loved, but at night time I just never really felt that fear. However, I have had a comment on my video about reading horror that told me that Shirley Jackson was writing about the horror of being a woman in the 1950s in the domestic sphere. The trapped feeling was part of that horror. So maybe when reading classics I need to do more research. Overall, I kind of got excited to be scared by horror, and I never was, which really surprised me because I am such a scaredy cat that I thought I would definitely be scared very easily and didn't want to be scared. But now I want to read something that will actually make me feel that creeping sense of terror up my spine. I don't want to read anything with a lot of gore and depravity. I want creepy and tension. So if you know any books like that, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear what you think. And I will definitely be doing some of my own research. Genres then. That is all 6 genres I read. And I am so tired. Vlogging every week for 6 weeks is really hard, even when you're just making weekly vlogs. But apart from the hard work, this experiment was fun and definitely pushed me outside of my comfort zone, even if those other zones did not bring me too much joy some of the time. Unfortunately, I haven't found that I loved any of these genres that I was reticent to try, but I have found out facts about my reading. I found out that I was being overly prejudiced about some of these genres, because even if I don't like them, I can see the merit in them. I can see the warmth of Cosy Mystery, I can see the tension of thrillers, and I can see the way that sci-fi comments on our current day life using allegory. Although I did find that fantasy was still rather sexist. But I didn't read any fantasy by women, so maybe that's my own fault. Even though I was disappointed with sci-fi, thriller and horror, I found the reason I was disappointed was because I didn't feel enough tension. I didn't feel on the edge of my seat. And so I feel like I need to read physical copies of some books in this genre in the future. So if you've got any recommendations for any books that had you biting your fingernails on the edge of your seat and unable to put them down, please let me know in the comments, because I would love to try them. I've also found that I actually know myself well. I know what I like in books. I thought that I wasn't being experimental enough and I was just reading the books that I knew I was going to like. But it turns out that's because I really know what I like. I know that I don't like high fantasy with lots of battles, but I do like folklore and a little bit of magic and whimsy. I know that I don't like page turning for the sake of it. I do like feeling tense when I care about the characters, even if I don't like them. And that means I can be more confident with myself going forward. I no longer have to feel guilty that I have specific genres that I love to read. I think I never should have felt guilty in the first place. There shouldn't be any guilt around reading, but as someone who thinks of themselves as a reader, I felt like I was limiting myself. And I felt like I was being a bit of a snob. I mean, in some ways I definitely was being a bit of a snob, but also I just know myself really well. With all that said, I'm not sure I would ever do this again, unless maybe I did a 6 weeks, 6 genres non-fiction, or maybe a 6 weeks, 6 genres overly specific genres edition. If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. Thank you for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and remember to subscribe, because I put out new videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Bye bye!